Hey everybody, welcome to Fantasy R&R. This is your host Ryan.
And I'm Rob.
And this is our Week 10 preview.
This is Fantasy with Rob and Ryan, Fantasy R&R.
Happy anniversary to Fantasy R&R. It's been 1 year since we started our podcast. Let's kick things off with Thursday Night Football's matchup.
Ravens at Dolphins.
I'm going to take Mike Gesicki as a big game. Ravens are the fourth worst in the league against tight ends. Tua Tagovailoa is healthier than last week coming off of that finger injury. I think he's actually going to be looking to go to Gesicki more often because the Ravens have a pretty good secondary to cover most of their main weapons. We're not sure if Devante Parker is going to be in or not. Jalen Waddle is definitely always an option as a huge weapon for the Dolphins, but Gesicki is going to be the top 3 tight end that he is currently once again this week.
And I'm going with Devante Freeman. Looks as if with Latavius Murray being out the past couple weeks, Devante Freeman has been the guy in Baltimore's backfield. He's been used on the ground and in the air. 3 touchdowns in the last 3 games, 2 of them rushing, 1 of them passing. I'm going again on Thursday Night Football. Devante Freeman will score a touchdown.
Falcons at Cowboys.
I'm going to go against everything I said week 1 about Matt Ryan. I still think the dude is a jabroni, but let's get real. This past game, 343 yards, 2 TDs, no interceptions, and a touchdown on the ground. So Matt Ryan got 26.6 points in our ESPN scoring format. Yeah, the week before Carolina didn't do great. Week before against Miami didn't do great. That's because he's Matt Ryan and he kind of sucks. But I'm going to tell you, against Dallas, this is probably his best chance to be a top 10 quarterback this week. They are giving up almost 20 points a game to opposing QBs in fantasy football purposes. Play Matt Ryan with confidence.
And I'm going on the opposite side of the ball. I know I've called Tony Pollard's name a few times in our podcast, but it was shown that Zeke hit the sidelines last week. Did not mean to rhyme there against Denver, with both of his knees wrapped up. So Tony Pollard could see an uptick in touches this week, and I think he has the potential to be a very good running back in the flex position for Week 10.
Saints at Titans.
This one seems like kind of a no-brainer. Let me go with Alvin Kamara as your main fantasy option in this game. Obviously, he's a must-start. All I'm trying to say here is he has been relatively consistent all season, but without Drew Brees on the team, we haven't seen the same Alvin Kamara that we've seen from years past. He's not getting a ton of yards on the ground like he used to, but thank God he's still a receiving threat. Week 7, 8, and 9, he combined for 22 targets and almost 200 yards passing and a TD. Alvin Kamara is probably going to do a lot of the same here with Tennessee, who's going to be looking for him in the run game. They've been real formidable lately, but Alvin Kamara will be your RB1 for this week.
Yeah, last week it was Jeremy McNichols or Adrian Peterson who was going to score for Tennessee with Derrick Henry being out, and it was Adrian Peterson. Of course it was. It appears he's going to be the goal line back for Tennessee. Cheap touchdowns count. We know this, so I'm going AP this game, thinking he's going to vulture yet another touchdown from anybody that's going to be in the backfield for Tennessee going into this week.
And I love that call from you, Rob. And just to add on to the Alvin Kamara situation, Deante Harris is actually officially on probation for his DUI incident. He might get suspended by the NFL. Michael Thomas has a setback with his ankle injury. He's out for the season. So look for this game to have 2 big running back performances.
Yeah, Ryan, I wonder if Harris and Ruggs had been hanging out this past weekend because, wow, that's interesting timing.
Jaguars at Colts.
Carson Wentz is going to be a top 10 QB this week against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Yes, he is coming off his best performance. The Jags D has looked better, and they're kind of in the middle of the pack giving up fantasy points to opposing QBs, but the Jags D fails time and time again against the Indianapolis Colts. I think Carson Wentz is in line for another big game, and he's probably going to be looking to guys like Michael Pittman to get all of the pressure off his shoulders. So look for those big plays. Carson Wentz, top 10 QB.
Another guy I've said a couple times here in this podcast, Dan Arnold needs to be rostered. He appears to be Trevor Lawrence's go-to guy this year as of right now. 3 of the last 4 games has had 60-plus yards receiving. This is a tight end we're talking about here, and I do believe his first touchdown is going to come this week against a Colts defense who struggled mightily last week. Dan Arnold, get him now before it is too late.
Browns at Patriots.
So this one's kind of an interesting situation. Ramondre Stevenson and Damian Harris are both in the NFL concussion protocol at the moment. We're not sure which one's going to take the lead backs, but I will just say this. Damian Harris kind of struggled in that game against the Carolina Panthers. Ramondre Stevenson, for the touches he got, 10 carries for 62 yards, 2 receptions for 44. The efficiency is there with Ramondre Stevenson. Again, we're not quite sure if he's going to be taking a ton of carries in this game or if Daante Harris is going to be the guy who's coming back off the concussion protocol quicker. But if Ramondre Stevenson is healthy and Daante Harris, who also took a big shot in that game, is not, Ramondre Stevenson's going to be a big play against the Cleveland Browns.
I'm going back-to-back weeks with the guy from the Browns. Donovan Peoples-Jones did have that game I was looking for last week with the big receptive touchdown, and I believe he is going to repeat his success this week. Last week, 2 for 3, 86 yards with a touchdown. The touchdown being a 60-yarder, but could be the downfield threat that Baker Mayfield has been looking for his time in Cleveland. And OBJ, you can go fuck yourself.
Bills at Jets.
I'm going to go with Cole Beasley in this one. This dude is an absolute target king. Technically, the Jets have been pretty decent against QBs and wide receivers in general this year, but then again, they are the Jets. So 12 touchdowns, 1 interception for the Jets defense as it pertains to QBs, 12 touchdowns against. And I'm thinking that, with Josh Allen coming off a bad game against the Jaguars, he's going to look to bounce back, and Cole Beasley, target king. 11 targets against Jacksonville, 13 targets against Miami, 9 targets against Tennessee, 13 against Washington this year, 13 against Pittsburgh. Cole Beasley is just one of those guys that no matter what is going to get volume thrown his way. I think he's going to have an easy time doing something with those targets in this game.
Yeah, in last week's game against the Jaguars, Zach Moss left the game. He's in concussion protocol, which means only one thing. Devin Singletary is the man in Buffalo once again, and that Jets defense is bad. So I'm going Devin Singletary in this game. I believe that Buffalo is going to want to show up after an abysmal loss last week against Jacksonville, Duval. And with that, I believe Devin Singletary is going to vulture a couple of cheapy touchdowns the way that Zach Moss has all season long.
Lions at Steelers.
I'm going to go with the Steelers D in this one. This is an interesting situation because even though the Lions seem scary with DeAndre Swift, Jared Goff, the Lions are actually the 7th worst offense in the NFL right now, and the Steelers are on kind of a slow roll at 5-3 after that win over the Bears. So I'm thinking that the Steelers D are going to rush Jared Goff hard. They're going to have him make some mistakes. They're going to get some sacks. They're going to get some picks, and the Lions are going to struggle to put up yards against the Steelers D. Take the Steelers D as a top 5 play this week.
Yeah, Ryan, this was a guy that we have been talking about all season long. We were hoping the Jags were going to draft him, but Pat Friermuth is here to stay. If this guy is available in any of your leagues, it is time to pick him up. 2 touchdowns last week. He's got great hands. Ben Roethlisberger has looked sluggish all season, but for whatever reason, him and Pat Friermuth have been hooking up, and this is a must-add. This is a must-play going forward, whether it be flex or your tight end one. Pat Friermuth, the guy that Fantasy R&R has been talking about all season long, is coming to fruition.
You guys heard it here first. The Muth is Luth.
Buccaneers at Washington football team.
For this game, I'm going to say Mike Evans has a monster game as your wide receiver 1. Rob Gronkowski was just tossing a football around at practice. AB is reportedly in a walking boot right now, so he's not looking like he's going to be back for Week 10. Washington football team is failing this year against QBs. They're the worst in the league with 20 touchdowns against to only 4 interceptions. So Tom Brady's going to be throwing wild, and he's going to be looking to one of his most trusted veteran targets in Mike Evans. Play Mike Evans as your wide receiver 1 with complete confidence this week.
Yeah, the Washington football team's defense has been an absolute mess this year. I think the Bucs are going to win really, really big. And on that, I believe Leonard Fournette is going to get a lot of touches in garbage time. I think put up a clunker before the bye week 2 weeks ago, but I am fully confident that Leonard Fournette's going to get back on track this week against a very struggling Washington football team. I'm looking at my crystal ball here, Ryan. I'm seeing a couple touchdowns. Let's go, Bucs.
Panthers at Cardinals.
This one's a speculative bounce back for me, DJ Moore. It's been really rough for DJ Moore and the Panthers ever since McCaffrey got hurt. Just to put it in perspective, DJ Moore, the first 4 weeks of the fantasy season, had over 12 points a game, over 17 in 2 of them, and 29 points in Week 4 against Dallas. Since then, he hasn't posted over 10 except 1 game. It's been really rough for DJ Moore. Sam Darnold's struggling, but the good news is DJ Moore's still getting targeted. 7 last game, 8 targets at Atlanta, 10 the week before that against the Giants, 13 against the Vikings the week before that. So I think DJ Moore's going to bounce back big, even though they're up against a tough Arizona Cardinals team. I'm thinking if Darnold doesn't play, PJ could be an actual change of pace that might get this offense started. So with CMC back to add a little bit of ease into the offense, I think DJ Moore, being the only other weapon on this team, could be your wide receiver 2 again.
I'm going James Conner in this one. I know a lot of people have been wondering who's going to be the running back coming out of Arizona between him and Chase Edmonds. But for the next month, it appears Chase Edmonds is going to be out. So James Conner is going to get all the touches. We saw what he was able to do last week with the 3 touchdowns, now being a total of 9 touchdowns on the year for James Conner. He's been a sneaky pickup this year so far, and his stock is only rising now as he appears to be the RB1 out in Arizona.
Vikings at Chargers.
Keenan Allen is the trustworthy receiver, especially in this game where the Vikings are the 8th worst against wide receivers for fantasy point purposes. Obviously, Mike Williams is a little bitch. We knew that. Keenan Allen is back in top form right now, coming off a huge game. We want to see more touchdowns from him, but Keenan Allen is your dependable guy. 17 points in 2 straight weeks, 13 targets, 11 targets the week before that. He has put up 181 yards in 2 games, and Keenan Allen is getting back on track. He's going to do it big against the Minnesota Vikings this week. Play Keenan Allen as a wide receiver 1 or flex 1.
Yeah, I'm going KJ Osborne on this one. This is more of a bounce back than anything. His last 2 games after the bye week have been abysmal, but Kirk Cousins needs to spread the ball if Minnesota wants to win. And I believe that KJ Osborne, being the wide receiver 3 on that team, is going to get just that against a Chargers defense, which has given up points this year, hasn't been all that great. So I do believe KJ Osborne could be very good in a flex position for Week 10.
Eagles at Broncos.
I'm going with Jalen Hurts as a bounce back for this week. You've seen some crazy stuff the past couple weeks. Jalen Hurts, who started off the season being the only QB to score over 20 points for multiple weeks, he's taken a backseat to the running game now. We've seen Boston Scott, and then we've seen Jordan Howard take over. Jordan Howard bouncing between the practice squad and the regular team. You're hearing a bunch of news about Jordan Howard being a must-add this week. I would say be weary of that and just rely on Jalen Hurts, who is still the top 5 fantasy quarterback in the league right now. Okay, the Denver Broncos are actually pretty tough against quarterbacks, and they're pretty tough against the run to some degree, but that's where Jalen Hurts is going to come in, because he's going to have that dual threat that the Broncos haven't had to face a whole lot this year. And let's get real, Teddy Bridgewater on the other side of the ball, he's not going to be pushing the offense enough, so the ball is going to be back in the Jalen Hurts' hand over and over. By the way, Drew Lock sucks.
Drew Lock, never heard of her. I'm going with Tim Patrick. Tim Patrick is alive, ladies and gentlemen. He's doing fairly well. Last week, 4 for 5, 85 yards, and a touchdown. I believe that he was dropped in our ESPN league, Ryan, just before the game. I believe that Tim Patrick has probably been dropped widely just due to the fact that Denver's offense has been as abysmal as it has been this season. I do say go pick up Tim Patrick if he's been dropped. I think he could be a very sneaky play going forward, especially if Teddy Bridgewater is going to play the way he did last week against Dallas.
Seahawks at Packers.
Seattle Seahawks fans rejoice. Russell Wilson is reportedly practicing again, and Pete Carroll says he does intend to use him in this game against Green Bay in the Week 10 matchup if he can be cleared to play. DK Metcalf can once again return to the 20 to 25 and 30-point fantasy prominence that we once saw at the beginning of the season. He took a little bit of a dip with Geno Smith, but he still is producing. He's just not getting the yards volume that we're used to seeing with Russell Wilson. So if you've been a little disappointed with DK Metcalf, I think this is going to be his big game where he's going to look to torch a Packers defense.
I'm going with the same guy I called last week with Green Bay, Allen Lazard. 1 for 1 last week with the touchdown, so he made that catch count. I believe he's going to make it 4 touchdowns this week. He's had 3 touchdowns in the last 3 games. You know Aaron Rodgers is going to come out spinning that ball. He's going to spread that thing, and I do believe that Allen Lazard could have his best week yet in Week 10 against a very suspect Seahawks defense.
Rams at 49ers.
Darren Waller, Waller the baller, he's going to have a huge game this week. And he's actually coming off a great game against the Giants where he had 11 targets, 7 receptions for 92 yards. Didn't get into the end zone, but it was a welcome change of pace after 2 straight weeks of under 9 fantasy points. So, Darren Waller, look to bounce back because you're going up against a Chiefs defense that is the 3rd worst in the league against tight ends. In fact, the Chiefs have given up more yards to tight ends than anyone in the league, and 6 touchdowns. So, Darren Waller, get ready to ball her out.
I'll ball you. Okay, I'm going on the same side of the ball, Deshaun Jackson. He is still alive as well, and he is doing what Deshaun Jackson does. I'm going to prediction here with Deshaun Jackson. This week, 1 for 1, 80 yards, 1 touchdown. And the caveat is, he gets injured. Las Vegas needs wide receivers. They picked one up in Deshaun Jackson. Let's see what happens this week. But yes, that Chiefs defense has been very, very bad. I believe that Derek Carr can get it going early and often in this game, and Deshaun Jackson will do what he does.
So the news on the street is that Darrell Henderson is suffering from an ankle injury at the moment. He was sidelined in the 2nd quarter of this last game against the Tennessee Titans. He was averaging 5 yards a carry before that, but we don't know if he's actually going to be back to full health. I would like to say that he has a big game at San Francisco this week, but it's starting to look more and more likely that he might have to sit out or take limited snaps in lieu of Sony Michelle. So Sony Michelle, who has actually been serviceable in all games where Darrell Henderson is still healthy, might be your main RB play here. Just to put that in perspective, Sony Michelle takes over after Darrell Henderson leaves. Doesn't get a ton of yards on the ground, 7 rushes for 20, but he gets the touchdown in the end zone receiving. So Sony Michelle, who's not normally a passing back, can do it both ways right now. So if Darrell Henderson sits, look for Sony Michelle to be a solid RB2 or Flex 2 play.
All right, one more time. I'm calling one more of my guys from last week, Brandon Iuke. Ladies and gentlemen, it is happening. Last 2 games, Brandon Iuke, 10 receptions, 15 targets, 134 yards, and the touchdown coming last week. I believe this is the beginning of something great happening for the second half of San Francisco. So Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, I think is going to make a really great pair, including George Kittle, who came back last week. But I think Ayuk is about to tear it up in the second half. I say pick him up before it is too late. Very much so like Pat Friermuth, I believe that Ayuk is going to finish this season very, very strong.
And that's going to do it for our Week 10 preview podcast. Once again, this was Rob and Ryan of Fantasy R&R. We'll see you next time.